Listen, it's one of the reasons why I like the idea of this podcast is that maybe we can help that, improve that number.
Make sure it's 24 people die at their desks the next 10 years, Darren, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. It's been a good day.
We're going to jump right into it today. Darren, I think now's a good time to highlight that nearly 14% of all lawyers, which is to say 1 in 7, are over the age of 65, which is, of course, the traditional retirement age in the United States. This is twice the average, which is 7%, of the general U.S. population.
Twice the average.
Which is to say, many continue working because their identity, their purpose, or their financial interests are inherently tied to their practice, which is to say their physical presence in their businesses. And that is particularly highlighted by the fact that retired attorneys' income on average drops by 70%, which is to say loss of billable hours, reduced bonuses, performance-based incentives. If you stop working, you sink. We're like sharks in the literal sense, which is to say you suffocate if you don't keep moving. And that means that nearly 40% feel inadequately prepared for retirement of any kind. This speaks to the scourge of zero-value exits. And I just wanted to highlight these stats because the cost of inaction on these issues is super crippling. Darren, what do you think?
Well, I think you can directly relate that back to cost of inaction. But I mean, I can tell you from experience over the last over 15 years, dozens of attorneys have died working in their 70s of clients of ours. And we find out from the secretary and the card declines or our billing department or somebody's going through it and they're contacting, hello, Liga Rev, and what are you guys doing? And they're closing everything out. It's tragic, right? I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like the idea of this podcast is that maybe we can help that, improve that number.
Make sure it's 24 people die at their desks the next 10 years,
I mean, look, I kind of plan to die at my desk, right? I plan on working and working. My grandfather worked till he was 87 as a doctor, right? And so I'm a believer in that. I know I have and talked to a lot of clients that would like to retire. I asked them, I was on a call last week with somebody because we were talking about AI and the future and what you need to do. And I said, but I don't want to give you a whole AI future pitch. When are you planning on retiring? He said, retiring? My wife says that to me and I'm like, what? I can't retire. I don't have the money to retire and live the comfortable lifestyle that we have. I'll work till I drop. I respect the choices people make, but if we can spur people to action a little bit earlier and so they can take advantage, I've talked about this with a lot of clients, their digital presence, their whole brand, online brand, domain, ranks and stuff like that has value and can be sold. Domain, rank, website, brand, people will buy that. Absolutely.
That's a fantastic segue because Hemet Law has looked at acquiring other offices. And one of the big problems is key man risk, which is to say exactly what you're addressing is that once the key practitioner, the founder, the managing partner, whatever it may be in that instance, vanishes from the business for whatever reason, be it retirement or exit or for sickness or whatever, the business essentially becomes worthless because 70% of it, 60% of it, half of its revenue is just from one guy. Not only does it make it difficult for practitioners to extract value from the business they've built when they, and retire happily with their family, but it also makes it hard for third parties who want to acquire these firms to enter the market. There's a liquidity crisis for that reason, right? It's called a practice because you can't step away. The moment you step away, it's really problematic for the future of your revenue stream. And I think that brings us a really good pivot to the cost of casual involvement in legal operations. Simply dabbling in anything, be it marketing, be it systems optimization or construction. If you don't have any systems, you just have the paralegal man the phones. It wastes more than it gains, right? You have to commit to building these systems, and lawyers spend time and money without consistency needed for results in these areas. So it's like going to the gym once a month. Like you pay the membership, you show up once, and then you wonder why nothing improves, right? It's the weighted blanket of inertia. People run their practices either without commitment or on autopilot.
I like that. Listen, inertia is the most powerful force in nature. It's just doing nothing, right? And I think a lot of people suffer from that. I myself, in certain areas, people need to commit to their business. Commitment requires, you mentioned the gym. I'm not that great at going to the gym because I'm not as committed to being in good health as I should be. But I'm committed to my business, and I get up every day and I go to my business. Yeah, I don't want to say lawyers lack commitment as some general rule, right? Incredibly committed workaholics, most of them in my experience. But I find in general, they don't commit to marketing or advertising as sort of part of their what they need to be thinking of.
We'll be back right after this message. Support for the show comes from Time. Time captures every billable email on cases and turns them into client-friendly time entry descriptions completely hands-free. No more lost time, no more pre-billing reviews, just up to 30% more revenue. Get a free demo at thyme.org/factor. That's time.org/factor. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. The constraint of law firms is the marketing and operations, not the legal acumen, by and large. Once you hit a certain level of minimum competency, the bottleneck in relative to your competitors is how well you can build these systems. Mr. Hemet has been in Israel for the last 2 weeks, right? He's billed like maybe 1 hour, right? He's answered some emails, right? That's why his business has value, right? Because it runs when he's not at the desk. It's not a measure of revenue or EBITDA or profit or how many leads per week or whatever metric you want to use. It's whether or not the house of cards stays standing when someone's not
Well,
there.
he's hired a team and he's hired you and he's built up people to run it. A lot of people, a lot of my clients, I'd say, generally run their own operation, right? They might have an office manager or even an ops manager, or that person isn't really running things. And unfortunately, they're not really running it, right? I sometimes tell people, when we meet them, when we look at all they've got, they've got this and a website and they've got this over here and they're these guys they worked with, but that was a bad experience. And now those guys are holding their domain hostage. And then these guys over here, and they just don't run it with the seriousness that it needs to have. This is important stuff, right? This is your virtual storefront and the virtual world where more and more people spend their whole day.
Give me an example. Name a practitioner that you've worked with in the past that really didn't give themselves the room to succeed because they didn't give you the time required to build their business.
Oh my God. I don't want to be critical. I love all our clients, but one a week. I talked to a client last week. They're 10 months behind on their blog post approval, right? So they're paying for 2 blogs a month. 20 of them are backed up. And we got on the phone and they're asking me about how they ranked. They Googled themselves and they didn't find themselves on, you're spending your time doing the wrong thing. You should be reading the blogs and blog posts and approving them so we can post them so you will rank better. You have to participate in your own success, right? It's your business. Nobody else is going to do it. There's no one who's going to come in. Hemet got lucky with you. Seriously, most people don't have somebody who, with a firm this big, who they can walk away and it can work with, and the other attorneys and everything is running.
I think it's a misnomer to say that Hemet Law only runs because of one person, be it me or Steve, right? It's a collective effort, right? Be ruthless with the first.
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that it's all, I respect Steve and all the work he's done and, but you've hired all those people.
I think, often they find us, right? My job is to find true believers, so to speak, right? It's to find people who want to do good work, who as close to, you don't have to love what you do, because I think that's a crock of shit to tell people, oh, do what you love.
I believe you want to help people find ways to do what they like doing at work.
Yes, exactly.
If you've done that, you've succeeded there. And listen, I don't want to say that, the success of Hemet is based on you alone, but, and you know what else they have? And this is where Steve made the smart call, is he gave you agency so that you could go make some decisions about marketing and grow. And he took some risks. A lot of small firms are afraid to commit. It's confusing. It's, they're focused more on, how do I bill more hours? And they're thinking about it from, a month to month thing. I ask people, what's your marketing budget for the year, for the quarter? What's your quarterly plan? They don't have one. I mean, they're running their business like a very small business, even when it's bigger.
I'm gonna
Right?
come to the defense of firms a little bit here, because the reason it's so hard to do is because it feels awful, right? Creativity and development and iteration is an inherently inefficient and risky process. There is no way to do it in a compelling manner that has real upside potential in a way that does not feel horrifically wasteful, right? I had to come to Steve numerous times over the last 7 years and be like, Steve, I'm going to need $100,000 next quarter, or one time next month. And it scared the hell out of him. Right. That was our first website rebuild with you guys. Right. And I was like, I'm going to need a ton of money. Here's what I think will happen. But honestly, these are all projections. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know if it'll work. Right. And that was the truth. And I think credit to Mr. Hemmett.
I absolutely give credit to him. Listen, I can't tell you how many times we talked to a marketing director of marketing at a good sized firm who say, I would love to do this, but there's no way I can take this to
the boss. Yeah.
My bosses, the partners. They'll never all agree on it. That you don't have to commit to understanding it, but you have to commit to it being something you need to do for your business and trying to understand it, trying to participate and be involved. Otherwise, you're just guessing. You're just rolling the dice. Maybe these guys, I don't know, I met these guys down here and they seem nice. You don't know what your benchmark is. You don't know where you're trying to get to. You don't have a goal. What's your goal? Get more business?
Yeah, that could mean anything, right? 10% more, 10,000% more. You want to be king of jurisprudence?
You want to win. You want to hear complacency, and we're talking about commitment. I think commitment versus complacency. Complacency is an extreme. I'd want to make the difference between commitment and involvement, because I think almost all of the firms are involved. Their business and their marketing, they're involved. Or they have somebody they trust who's involved, who's doing it. Are they committed? That takes more effort, but I think it gives a greater return.
The takeaway here is agency and autonomy in that commitment. I think the real innovation with Hemmett Law is that we have one person who deals with our marketing team, me, right? That is a one-man job, and that's not a bug. That's a feature, because it means not only is the opportunity cost is minimized, but two, it means there's a single point of contact and decisions are made quickly, right? Because I've said this on the podcast before, but you don't need to be right in business all the time, right? In fact, if you're correct on average 51% of the time, you'll win. On top of that phenomena, if you can just take more shots on goal faster than your competitors, even if they know the same thing as you, right? Even all things, all knowledge, all capabilities being equal, simply executing on that vision faster is a competitive advantage in and of itself, right? And so these rules by committee tank, not even if your theory is correct, even if you arrive at the perfect answer, these rules by committee sink your ability to build real shareholder value for your team.
I see constant conflict, and I think it's a catch-22 for a lot of law firms, right? Mm-hmm. They know they need to spend more time on this, but also they're so overworked often and working so much that they don't have any time. If they had an extra couple hours a week, they'd go spend it with their kids, or they'd do something else. They'd work more they probably would work more if they could find another 2 hours. I'll tell you this, the ones that engage with us, I want to say they're twice as successful with their marketing. It might be an exaggeration, but they're at least 50%. Mm-hmm. ROI, spending a couple $1,000s a month with us on some marketing, spending $10,000 a month on some more advanced marketing, whatever it is. If they're involved and their ROI is X and they're not involved, it's going to be lower, right? Every time. And I'm making a correlation, and this is very anecdotal. All of the guys that died, and we found out, the secretary told us that, Mr. So-and-so has passed away. They were never really engaged. We would have known they were sick. We have clients that we know they're going through health issues. Our clients stay with us for about 8 years on average, and many of them have been with us for 15, and they're now retiring. The ones that are retiring, I think I'm done. I'm going to go fishing. They're usually the ones that have made every quarterly meeting, that respond, that get back to us, that get us an updated photo for the whatever page thing, that make us work harder.
That's such a great way to put it. Hemmett Law disfavors using vendors generally. We always find it's better to do whatever it is the vendor specializes in-house worse. But having learned from that experience that we think that itself is a value add, which is part of why it's so remarkable we've worked so long together. And that's one of my jobs, is to get more out of our, transparently, is to get your team to do more for the same amount of dollars, because I'm engaged. I'm constantly asking questions.
It's what I'm trying to get out of my business attorney. It doesn't work so well. She charges me for every email, everything. But yeah, so many attorneys that I work with, and I've worked with thousands of law firms now, they're all professionals. And they're all professionals in the rest of their career and financially, and they all manage things professionally, right? Top notch. A lot of them fall short on dealing with just marketing, lead generation, bringing in prospects for more business so you keep making money and maybe you make a little extra.
We'll be back right after this message. Support for the show comes from LegalRev. They don't just market law firms, they grow them. With smart SEO, Google Ads, web design, and AI-ready search strategies, they make sure your next client finds you first. If you're ready to win online, go to legalrev.com/factor. That's legalrev.com/factor. And we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. Darren, I think we should bring it back to some practicals. I think I'm going to to reiterate the takeaways of this entire episode. I think we need action plans over goals. That's what I would tell any law firm listening to this. Instead of you should do more marketing, that's a vague goal, right? There's nothing to be held accountable to. There's nothing to commit to, right? There's no plan. There's no consistency, and you fail to the level of your systems, right? You don't rise to the level of your aspirations. So when everyone says, I want more business, what the hell does that mean? What we recommend you do is, if you're not sure where to start, every Monday at 9, just sit down and spend 30 minutes responding to client inquiries, to marketing outstandings, thinking about problems that you're engaged with. Research shows that when-then planners are about 300% more likely than others to actually reach their goals, because they actually sit down in a systemized way and think about them. But I think the time block method, right, is where you sit down and structure your day, or have a time set aside to think about your goals, to treat marketing and system and operations activities like court time, right? Not if time allows, because if time allows, it never will. There will always be something else to do. You need to be deliberate about carving out the time and starting small, right? A minimum viable marketing effort is available to any practitioner if you want to sit down and figure out or not just marketing, operations. A minimum time investment is required, and hire for your weaknesses, right? That's what I'm saying. Once you sit down for long enough and realize what you're consistently struggling with, go out into the market and find someone. Go to the business school, right? Find an MBA who's really excited to get involved with some really challenging problems. It's part of why it's been so easy for us to recruit, is that hey, we need a head of production at this law firm. That's the most interesting job posting you've ever seen on the planet. And it's been tremendous, because now we get to tell every new recruit that comes to the door, hey, we've got this podcast studio, we have a YouTube channel, we have an open floor plan office. It makes you look different, and it grows the business.
I'm a believer in that myself. As you've said before, you like to bring things in-house. Marketing is one of those things that is difficult to bring, and it's why you work with us. You'd have to hire so many different subject matter experts, and then they wouldn't be working full time. So working with a reputable agency, you're essentially sharing these people with a paid marketing director. Well, you want somebody with a lot of skill. That's an $80,000, $90,000 job, at least in Oregon, but you don't need them all the time. You need them, 4 hours a week. Oh, well, you can't do that. Okay. Well, now you're hiring out some guy freelance, and they're managing something with your credit card. It gets really complex fast. Obviously a proponent of this, because this is what we do, but having as much of it consolidated with a single company that you trust, that you build a relationship up with, I think there's value in that. Find somebody you can trust and let them do their job, but pay attention, be involved, learn enough, ask a few questions, right? Learn enough so that you can assess the quality of the work that's being done. Ask for transparent reporting, ask for, data from Google, some of these other places where there's plenty of available reporting. But I think most importantly, you need to engage with the people that you're working with. I'm very engaged with my business attorney. We do all kinds. We talk to her all the time, and we're doing different things. I'm engaged with my CPA. I'm engaged with my investment. Why not be engaged with your marketing director or your whoever that is, you're probably spending more on your marketing than you are on any of those other people or all of those other people combined. I'm surprised at how many clients are spending, 5 figures a month and don't want to talk to us. I'd want to talk to you. I suppose I should say, look for somebody that wants to talk to you, that wants to engage, because without feedback, we can't really do our job. We need to know. It'd be like if I didn't provide any feedback or more information to my, a contract attorney. Yeah, I need a contract for this vague sort of thing. Do a good job. You're a lawyer.
It's not going anywhere. I mean, not only that, but you should be cautious. If you have any sort of team, be cautious about sending every single partner into the marketing meeting. Right. There's a coin to that. There's an opposite side where way too many people commit and it adds no value, and more importantly, it takes you away from your billables. Right. So if 5 partners join at $1,000 an hour for a 1-hour meeting, that is a $5,000 meeting right off the bat.
In my experience, the firms that are the most successful with their marketing, and usually it ripples out, or not ripples out, it shows in other aspects of their business. They're successful in other ways. They designate someone who has some knowledge of marketing, advertising, journalism, writing, whatever. Assign somebody, or assign one of the smart younger people in your office to this. They'll usually to do it. You're already paying them. They might have, I always find that people have extra time to do things that are interesting. They'll find the time.
And that's so interesting because when I've done my law firm consulting, because for those of you that do not know, I do law firm consulting on the side. It's honestly more as a hobby these days. I should really charge more. Every single time because they want to grow, right? My sample selection bias is people who want to grow. They recognize a problem, and there's usually between 5 and 20 of them, right? Somewhere in there, right? Mid-sized team, just going through growing pains. And I tell them, hey guys, like, who's doing this now? Who do you sort of have working at this? And they're like, oh yeah, there's a paralegal who set up our last 5 systems. And I'm like, so they're your chief operating officer? And they say, no, he just does all the operations. And I'm like, guys, right? You clearly are sitting on talent that can operate at this. And the reason he hasn't been successful is because you keep telling him to march in opposite directions, or not telling, you're not giving him the agency he requires. It astounds me how many law firms sit on the talent they already have in-house. Right. And the way you phrase that, like, oh, people always have room to do stuff that's interesting and that they engage with. They gravitate towards interesting challenges. That's exactly what's happening here. And the partners are actively resisting that force, which is always such a tragedy, because then they pay some, moron like me to come into their business and then just tell them what their paralegal has been telling them the whole time. And then they listen to me.
The challenge, I think, is it's intangible. And a lot of people don't completely understand it. It's a moving target. It's changing all the time, and AI, and it's just overwhelming. In my experience, attorneys like to have the facts and understand it and make a decision. And we don't have the facts. I don't have no control over Google or Open AI or what people are doing next, but I can tell you things that you can do. First of all, you can set a goal. More money or more leads, or we need to get our digital thing together is not enough. Right? It needs to be a plan. Most agency, if they're cool, will want to develop a plan with you. I'd love to develop a budget with most of the clients. Like, you have to take it seriously, and it's compounding interest, right? The more you do over time, if you haven't been doing it, now's a great time to start. If you've been putting it off, that's a mistake, right? You need to be doing it consistently, and it will grow just like any investment.